Good afternoon, gentlemen of the press. We have just concluded today's Security Council meeting, and far-reaching discussions were made, and resolutions could only be confirmed based on extensive legal consideration. It is in that regard and for that purpose that the Attorney General of the Federation is here to give us a briefing and the developments that will come out of extensive legal consideration. I thank you.
Members of the press, as rightly presented by the Honorable Minister of Interior, we were in attendance at the National Security Council meeting number 4 of 2022, and very robust deliberations were carried out, issues raised, and resolutions developed. But fundamentally, the major resolutions, or perhaps the major issues that were deliberated upon, were the issues that borders one on the logistics being used by the terrorists, the Boko Haram, the bandits, among others, in the act of executing their unfortunate acts of terrorism, terrorizing the country. And it was extensively deliberated upon as to what needs to be done for the purpose of ensuring that their means of logistics are indeed adequately considered and the necessary steps are taken in degrading their capacity to move around. So discussions were carried out, deliberations made, and sizable resolutions in that direction were equally developed. The government will look into that possibility with particular regard to restrictions on use and distribution of motorcycles, among others, which is the most conventional means, logistical means being deployed by terrorists. Again, issues of funding of the terrorism and terrorist acts were equally discussed, deliberated upon, and considered. As you rightly know, recently, the government, under the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari, had indeed passed certain laws or assented to certain bills, inclusive of the Money Laundering Prevention and Prohibition Act, among others. With the passage of that law or assenting thereto, the conventional means of terrorist financing and funding was substantially and drastically addressed, and that led to forensic analysis and identification of certain personalities that were in one way or the other alleged to have been connected with terrorist funding and financing. But then new innovations were brought into the terrorist funding and financing, inclusive of the use of mineral resources, the mining, for example, among others, and indeed ransom, which is conventionally been taken by the terrorists, and then the need arises to now look into those frontiers that are being considered by the terrorists for the purpose of addressing them accordingly. So a resolution was equally developed on the need to address frontally, attack, and ensure at the end of the day that other considerations be put in place by terrorists in terms of funding their activities are equally addressed. And with that in mind, the government is looking at what measures to take in terms of addressing, bridging, and blocking associated source of funding, including payment for ransom, and indeed the mining activities, and the possibility or otherwise of suspending for the time being mining activities are being considered as well by the government. Again, other than logistics and funding, mining, other considerations were equally put in place on table for consideration of the Council with particular regard to the unfortunate incidents of correctional service attack, and equally there were anticipated resolutions arising from the consequences associated with dereliction of duty. So the essence of this press briefing is simply to give you an insight as to the issues that have been deliberated, as to the likely resolutions being anticipated, while the government is looking into the possibilities of addressing those issues as canvas. Issues associated with logistics of terrorists and bandits, issues associated with blockage of the funding, the source of funding, issues associated with the likely possibility of general suspension of mining activities, if indeed it is established, an nexus and connection is indeed established, and then the issues associated with consequences for dereliction of duty, if indeed any is established, arising from the report being expected and anticipated relating to the Kuje Correctional Center incident of the consequential break thereof. Thank you very much, distinguished members of the press.
Okay, I think it's all right now. Let's pick the ones. Well, let us first of all admit that there won't be this Security Council meeting if there are no security challenges. We will have limited it to just mere Federal Executive Council meeting. And if you recall, one was held on the 8th of July, just 2 weeks thereafter. 2 weeks thereafter, we are holding another one after the Eid break. So it shows the concern and the commitment of the federal government to the security of the Nigerian people. That I must emphasize. And I want to equally annotate the fact that government is not unaware of the concerns of the Nigerian people. Again, that is why, apart from just those of us in the line ministry on security, the Attorney General of the Federation has to be here to let us know that it's not just mere action. It's action that is well thought out and rooted in law. Democracy, essentially, is not just limited to choice, which we call election. It's rule of law. That's my own definition of democracy. And that is why he's there, to let us know that, yes, we had extensive discussions on every aspect of issues concerning security and insecurity in Nigeria. And we could as well come out to say that, yes, resolutions have been taken on this or that. It can't just be that alone. He is charged with reviewing every issue discussed and coming up with outline of those things that can be worked upon and approved by the president within the ambit of the law. That is why it's there. On your specific question to me as to what's happening to the what's the outcome of our investigation on the Kuje incident, a preliminary report of what happened in Kuje had been sent to the president. But a more detailed, comprehensive report will come at the end of the investigation. We are on it. We identify all those whose action or inaction led to that unfortunate incident. And by then, as he said, those who have shirked their responsibility will have to face the consequences of their action. On intelligence, of course, you have levels of intelligence. And there is internal intelligence service, there is external intelligence service. Sufficient effort, and I must say this with all sense of responsibility, sufficient efforts at intelligence were made. But unfortunately, those of you who accompanied me when I visited the place will show that I said very clearly that we had some problem with the will to hurt. And that is how I want to say. I'm not blaming anybody. I recognize the roles of all the agencies that contributed defense and resistance forces to protect that ugly incident. But I have to say, we noticed some, it's not yet fully confirmed, some incapacity in terms of will. That's what we mean by whoever was responsible for the failure of defense and security and the breach of that institution or facility will face the consequence. As to other things, the AGF will have to respond. I think I've answered those ones that are directed at me. I thank you.
Well, most of the questions were addressed by the Honorable Minister Interior. But one singular question that I find interesting, which I think I should address squarely, is the issue raised on the productivity or counterproductivity of placing a ban on certain logistical considerations associated with bringing an end, or perhaps maybe taking steps over the challenges associated with the insecurity. I think the major consideration and the basis for determination of productivity or otherwise is the national interest. We are Nigerians because Nigeria as a country exists. And any issue that at the end of the day will translate to threat on the national security, corporate existence of a country requires for certain sacrifices. So regardless of the means that is being considered for perhaps a possible banning, provided what matters is a sacrifice that will see us through addressing the challenges associated, the security challenges, I think no sacrifice is too big as far as that issue is concerned. And above all, if you are talking of perhaps banning the motorcycles, for example, I believe the component or perhaps the number of people that could be using the motorcycle in Nigerian state may not be up to 20% of the Nigerian population. So if the 20% of the Nigerian population is called upon to now make certain sacrifices for the purpose of addressing a challenge, a security challenge that is all-pervading, affecting over 200 million Nigerians, I think no sacrifice is big enough. That sacrifice, to my mind, is indeed a sacrifice worthy of being considered. But above all, the responsibility of the government is indeed the public interest as against individual interest, and what the government is considering as far as any ban, both as it relates to mining or as it relates to logistics, is indeed the national, the public as against individual interest. So that, I think, should be the major consideration as far as the issue of logistics restrictions are concerned. So I will call on the Honorable Minister of Police Affairs in case he wishes to make any further comment about these matters, to do so before we call it a day. Honorable. Well, we'll take only two further questions, please. And
women. Let's hear the women.
Those are the questions we can take for now. But then I will start with the last question that is raised, particularly as it relates to the resolutions. I think you need to get it clear that what I said precisely and what indeed happened at the council was resolutions were being considered. So the consideration of the resolution is what has taken place arising from the deliberations at the council, and not that the resolutions were indeed finally taken. These are two distinct and separate things. And as it relates to the issue of investigation on OWO, I think one thing that is clear is investigation generally can be a work in progress until the relevant department, ministries, department, and agencies of government are conclusive over it. You cannot jump to a precise conclusion. So what I'm saying, in effect, that investigation has or indeed been sanctioned as it relates to these two issues of the jailbreak and indeed the issue associated with OWO, and that investigation is being carried on as a work in progress at the appropriate time when investigations are concluded by the ministries, agencies, and department of government that are responsible for the conduct of such investigation. The public, the Nigerians, will certainly be adequately and fully informed as to the outcome. So the other issue relating to financiers of Boko Haram, generally speaking, in line with the international norms, investigation is never a one-day affair. That I believe you very well know. And arising therefrom, anything investigation is indeed a work in progress, and prosecutions arising therefrom are being indeed carried out, are being conducted. So what I'm saying in essence, the fact remains that there are certain investigations have taken place, and then some of the investigations have been concluded, and as these investigations are being concluded within the context and spirit of work in progress, charges are being made before the court, and then these cases are being taken. So that is what I can tell you about the financiers. And arising from the investigation, it comes to the knowledge of the government clearly that when the law, I'm talking of Anti-Money Laundering Prevention and Prohibition Act, is put in place, the terrorists are now devising other means of now avoiding the use of conventional financial institutions and now changing tactics to now concentrate minds and energy in the direction of ransom and in the direction of mining, among others. And that is what the government is equally looking at the possibility of blocking. As you take steps in terms of addressing the challenges, criminals are taking further steps in terms of devising additional means. As a government, you have a responsibility to look into those means, new measures being taken by criminals, and then addressing them. The new measures being taken by criminals as it relates to terrorist funding and financing as it is today is embarking more on massive kidnapping for the purpose of ransom. And then as well, embarking of massive mining activities, among others. We have blocked conventional financing arrangement that was put in place by them before through the use of VVN, through the use of national identification numbers, and they have now shifted grounds. Which grounds have they shifted? Shifting grounds towards perhaps ransom taking. That is why we are experiencing the escalation of kidnappings, among others, and indeed mining, among others. And that indeed was what was deliberated upon this afternoon by the Security Council for the purpose of coming up with measures that could now effectively address the challenges associated with funding. Thank you very much.
Let me answer Dr. Leon. Dr. Leon, we are strengthening our borders to prevent any importation of arms and dangerous materials that can threaten the integrity and the security of the nation and the security of our people. That's what I can say. And it's not limited to immigration alone. All security forces are involved at various levels. But do not take your mind all the further. We have a vast territory. And that whatever is happening within Nigeria must be put in the context of what is happening in the region. But the federal government is not unaware of the need to strengthen the border forces to prevent ingression or importation of contrabands, particularly arms and ammunition. Well, we are not relenting our efforts in freeing all those who are still with these bandits. And in due time, not only those not only the victims of the Kaduna Abuja train bandit attack, several others who are still in the hands of these bandits are being worked upon, and we shall free them as soon as we are able to so do.
I will call on the Honorable Minister. I will call on the Honorable Minister, Police Affairs, to round off his submissions. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I want to, first of all, apologize for coming in very late. This is due to circumstances beyond my control. Let me say that I think my colleagues have done justice to this issue, but I want to add that our meeting today has been very proactive, very articulate, and specific to the points of what we wanted to discuss. Several recommendations have been made, which I believe they must have told you, and particularly the issue of these motorcycles, the issue of mining, and several others. These are recommendations that we have agreed upon and which we are working on to ensure that we checkmate some of these loopholes. Mr. President has specifically made mention of the implication of these threats to farming in our country, and he has directed government should take all technological and administrative measures to ensure that our farmers do actually go back to their farms to ensure that we have food in this country to eat and to export. Government, the fact that we have come back here in less than 2 weeks is an indication that the government is very serious about what is happening, and we are up and doing. We are equal to the task of following up these issues to ensure that we bring them to their logical conclusion. I want to say that all the issues that they have raised are the issues that we have discussed, and I believe you must have asked questions that are supposed to be asked, and I don't expect any other question on the remarks that I have made so far, because they are just concluding remarks. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to engage you.